Welcome to Down Home Horror, where we keep the hall lights on for you. I'm Amber,
I'm Alex.
and today
Huh? What are
we're
we talking about
finally
today?
talking about Evil Dead Rising. So,
Yes.
before we we open the book on this and summon a
Open the
demon,
book.
yeah, summon a demon with ancient incantations.
Yes.
I have
That's
a
what it does.
quick-ish story.
Ooh,
Um
okay.
that kind of has to do with my cinematic experience seeing Evil Dead Rise. Um, I'm going to be reading this from a piece of paper because when I was writing it, I was like, I might cry. So I can't focus brain power on remembering what it is I'm trying to say and articulating it like a human being and trying not to cry at the same time. So I'm going to read it.
Sure.
So bear with me.
Okay.
Here we go. And this might be sappy, by the way. So, grab some tissues. Not for you, but for me, because I'm a big fucking baby. So for some context, if you haven't watched our first video, we talked about our top influences as horror fans. And I named, spoiler alert, my dad as my number one pick. He introduced me to the genre at the ripe age of 4. Because that
Perfect
made
time.
sense, yeah. And instilled in me an undying love for horror. From the ages of 12 to 18, we went and saw like 90% of every horror movie that released in theaters. And when I was 18, I moved away from home and I no longer had my movie buddy. So we would text occasionally about new movies that came out when we went to go see them. But it wasn't the same as getting to a theater like stupid early so he could get his nachos and his hot dogs and his Pepsi icy, and us waiting an ungodly amount of time for them to be done before we could actually go watch the movie, and then spending the entire 15-minute drive back to his house literally just talking about what we had just seen. But obviously, it's not obvious, but I did recently move back home due to health concerns with my dad. And for the first time in 10 years, I got to have that same theater experience again, all the way up to the drive back to his house. And even after 10 years, nothing has changed. And words cannot explain how I'm going to cherish the experience of seeing a new installment of my favorite franchise in the whole entire fucking world with one of my favorite people in the world. And it's super cool also that I get to solidify that experience by sitting here and talking about it on a platform that gives me the freedom to share my love of horror. So, two things. One, thanks to Alex for joining me on this adventure, and also just pushing me to get out here and do it. And thanks to all of you guys who watch the videos, like them, comment them, and subscribe to our content. So yeah, there's my story. I'm gonna flip the page on that, literally.
Oh, you said sappy. I'm not sure what I expected. I should have expected dad stuff, and I was like, oh no, I should have grabbed tissues. That
I
was so
told you.
sweet.
I
That
told
was so
you.
sweet, and I'm so glad that you got to have that experience with your dad.
Me too.
What were
um,
your dad's thoughts on the movie?
oh my god, it was honestly the best thing ever. Just hearing him sitting there like eating his nachos and just being like, oh, "Holy shit!" Every like 10 minutes. It was awesome.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was the best. But I'm done now. I didn't cry.
You came close.
I
You came close.
I got real close. Please excuse how disgusting my voice probably sounded, but let's not talk about that. Let's flip the page on it, like I said,
Yes.
and get
New.
into Evil Dead fucking Rise.
Fucking credits rise.
Yes. Okay, so I have to know because
Yeah.
I got so excited when you told me that you went to go see it. What were your initial thoughts on it?
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And like I had the caveat of it was an Evil Dead movie. And like if I had a bingo board, it would have been all like marked all over the place.
Right.
And I loved that about it. They didn't try to rewrite anything, right?
Nope.
They took the core elements, put it into this different plot, and I'm like, yes, that's how you do a
Yes.
franchise stretch, right? Like that's how you grow as a franchise. A plus all around. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Had a good theater experience, all of it.
Yes. I use the term A plus a lot in my here notes.
Oh, good,
So
good, yes. 10 out of 10.
yes, my initial thoughts
Yes.
were everybody's gonna be like, wow, that was cheesy. My initial thought was quite literally, that was fucking groovy. Like,
Yeah.
it was so much fun. Uh, so, Evil Dead fucking Rise.
Yes.
Apparently that's what the movie is actually called now, because that's what I keep calling it. That's
Calling
just
it.
my yeah, it's just my excitement coming out.
It's like how they had to rebrand Harley Quinn's Fabulous Emancipation. They just had to call it Birds of Prey. It was too much of a mouthful.
All right, so Evil Dead Rise. In this new installment of the Evil Dead franchise, director Lee Cronin decides long forgotten are the days of the isolated cabin in the woods, at least for now, as we're introduced to a new location of an anxiety-inducingly tall, decrepit apartment building in a more urban, everyday setting. But while that setting may have changed, we stick to the typical Evil Dead formula of a small group of people where one idiot, sorry, Danny, invokes an evil that no one is prepared for. Hell yeah. Literally. I wrote, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
So, okay, I think first off, one
Yes.
of the coolest things, well, not the coolest, but it's up there that I learned about this is that it was originally supposed to be a straight to streaming release, but the critical response and screenings did so well that it got the theatrical release that it by far deserved. I like it would have been a major injustice, I think, to this movie to have it just go straight to streaming. So,
Yeah, no. I saw someone else mention it and I went, oh yeah, you're right. The sound quality alone. It's gonna be fine in the living room, but that's I think of all the movies we've seen so far, it's the first one that I went, yes, I'm glad I saw it in
yes.
theaters.
That was one of my thoughts after the fact too, was that I think that it's going to hold up fine in, a home setting, but there is no other fucking experience like seeing this in a movie theater. And it kind of reminded me, I know you haven't seen this quite yet, but it kind of reminded me of Smile because I did rewatch it because of future things. And
Spoilers for
um
spoilers.
yeah. um but in the sense that like I saw Smile in theaters, and the watching it on my computer on Discord, streaming it with my boyfriend, not even close to the same experience as seeing it in theaters. And just because like the sound and stuff, and Evil Dead is no different in the sense that it very much is a movie that is meant to be enjoyed in theaters, but I think that it will hold up well in a at
Yeah.
home living room or bedroom, wherever.
Oh my. Evil Dead and Chill?
My dream, my literal dream.
Perfect. Delightful.
Yes. um but yeah, I think it'll do well either way. um so we obviously start with this opening scene where we are of
Mhm.
course reintroduced to a cabin setting. And the first thought I had through the first part of it was that is the scariest rendition of Wuthering Heights I have ever fucking heard. Yeah, it was that whole scene was a really nice callback to the first Evil Dead, where Cheryl in her Deadite form is reading off the playing cards that everyone is holding, without actually looking at them, because it's set up the same way, where Teresa is sitting in a chair in a corner, while Deadite Jessica is fucking sitting on the bed with her back to her, and she is spouting off Wuthering Heights quotes, and I was just like, this is really creepy. This is really creepy, and I love it. I love it. And then we get the scalping.
Oh my god, yeah, just boom!
uh,
There it is.
I love
I
that.
went, oh god! I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm watching an Evil Dead movie.
Right.
Shit. Yeah.
And the
What was I expecting?
craziest part is like you infer that that's probably what's going to happen if you've seen the trailer.
Yeah.
um because this is one of the features in the trailer is somebody dropping a fucking scalp on the dock. But that doesn't fucking matter. Like, I don't care that I've seen it already. I was still like, that is beautiful. Like, that scene was crazy. And that
See?
was the first time I heard my dad go, oh shit. Like, he was loving
Yeah.
it and it was fucking awesome. And then, of course, that leads up to, hands down, the best fucking title card I have
Oh my
ever
god.
seen in my life. Like,
The sound, like I said, we just talked about the sound of it, seeing the slow rise of it.
oh,
There's something about the figure hovering above the water. Oh, chef kiss, chef. I
it
just
was
goosebumps.
so good.
It was one of those things. Again, I say I'm a recent Evil Dead fan, right? I saw Army of Darkness forever ago. May or may not binged all of Ash vs. Evil Dead here recently, per some of our last
Hell
videos.
yeah.
But um, this was one of those things like, man, I'm glad that I have enough of a background of Evil Dead to really fully appreciate the coolness that just happened here.
Yeah.
Like, it's a cool title card, but like I felt like one of the fans watching that all happen, hearing the theme in the background. Oh, it was cool. It's a cool experience.
I wish that I could have seen it on opening night because I can only imagine how hard those theaters were popping off
Oh,
with
I'm
people
sure.
screaming. Because
Mhm.
that's the most of what I saw for the first week that it was out, was how fucking badass the title card was. But I was like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know
Mhm.
anything going into this. And I just I was not disappointed. Like, my jaw hit the ground so fast. I was blown away. It was absolutely beautiful. Lee Cronin, please. Like, stop.
I'm gonna bet the next 5 years we're gonna see 3 other horror movies that do that similar thing of like roll the credit or
Yeah.
the title behind background. It's gonna happen.
Oh,
It's
definitely.
it's Evil Dead Rise and it rises. Oh,
Uh-huh.
it's so good.
It's incredible. It's my favorite title. I'm a sucker for a good title card. It
Sure.
I hate to say this because it seems silly, but a title card can make or break the movie for me, because
Yeah.
it sets up kind of like an expectation of what the rest of the how the rest of the movie is going to go, which might sound crazy, but if you know, you know. If you get it, you get it, you know?
You get it.
Um
You get it. No, I feel you. I feel like that way a lot with TV show opening credits, and I can tell like, oh god, we're doing this trend. Like when Daredevil came out on Netflix, and everyone was doing the solo object with like the one thing melting on top of it. Like that was the go-to credit
right.
thing for a while. So no, you're right. Title sequences can impact the story entirely.
Yes. So, after the best title card I've ever seen in anything ever,
Mhm.
we flash back to 2 days earlier, and obviously this is where we're introduced to our new urban setting in Los Angeles. What is your opinion on taking Evil Dead out of the woods?
So again, coming from this fresh green fandom, right? I liked it. I remember trying to explain, like, oh my god, there's no cabin. Oh, there's no cabin. Oh, that's so exciting. There's no cabin. And then like the first scene, I'm like, ah shit, there's a cabin. But like not in a bad way, right? It wasn't the cabin, but it was a cabin. And I thought it was interesting and I wasn't too worried about it, but I think that's because I didn't have the huge attachment to it. I can understand what people wouldn't like it because it's taking away from the core identity of it.
Right.
But I think what they did do a good job of was isolating it, which we can talk more about later. I think the biggest thing is feeling isolated.
Yeah.
And there's something very isolating about the big city, right? Where you don't really know anyone around you, you can't really reach out for help, and there's a lot I want to talk about isolation within that.
I had the same feeling in the fact that I understand why people are upset about it. But even for me, who is largely attached to the Evil Dead,
Mhm.
I liked it. I thought that it was a nice, like, fresh perspective on a franchise that, other than the show, does has the same setting. And on, of course, Army of Darkness is not a
Mhm.
cabin, but
It's true.
you know, like, the main core pieces of this franchise are all in the same place. So, and I thought that it was also a very brave decision
Mhm.
after the backlash that Scream 6 received for moving to New York, I think it was, from the small town of Woodsboro. But of course, this is written probably at the same time, or if not before, Scream was. So I don't know. You know what? I like Scream 6, and I'll die on that hill. So same concept. I liked that they were able to move it to a new setting and give us something new and fresh, and I did like the way they isolated it too.
This might surprise no one who knows me. Like the next day after I watched this, I went down a deep rabbit hole on YouTube asking for analysis things and learning a lot about the Evil Dead. But I did find out that this Evil Dead Rise was written during the height of COVID lockdown,
Okay.
which I like with that, I feel like the story makes so much
Oh
more
yeah.
sense. Not that it didn't beforehand, but like,
Right.
oh yeah, being trapped in your house in an apartment with your family when there's this contagious thing running around. Weird. Like, I wonder what the inspiration was. Um, and I think that also makes more sense for it to be an apartment building in a big city, right? When you take into consideration that it was written at this time
Right.
of great upheaval within our culture.
Yeah. I'm kidding. Yeah, so we have our new setting in this apartment building, and there we are introduced to our five main characters, which, if you don't know this, having five main characters isolated in an area is another typical Evil Dead formula. But our new characters for Evil Dead Rise are Beth, who is played by Lily Sullivan, Danny, who is played by Morgan Davies, who is our culprit, and
Son of a gun.
I know, and finds the Necronomicon against all fucking warning signs of don't touch this. Finds the book and removes it from a foundation that the apartment building is built under, which I think they explained that it used to be a bank.
A bank.
Um, and removes it from there after an earthquake and takes it up to the apartment. Smart. Um, and then we have Bridget, who is played by Gabrielle Eccles, and Cassie, who is adorable and is played by Nell Fisher, and my current horror queen, Alyssa Sutherland, as Ellie, our mommy dearest. Mommy dearest.
Before we continue too much further, again, trigger warning for child harm. Because
True.
boy, howdy, I have a lot of thoughts that we'll be talking about later on, but we're gonna be talking about child harm.
Yes.
Be aware, if that's not your thing, we understand.
Yes. Going off of the characters, I have to be completely honest in that I honestly I did not care for any of them.
None of them.
No. There was nothing that drew me to any of them. Well, hold on. To to 3 out of the 5 of them. I think obviously from an acting standpoint, the performances were phenomenal on everybody's part. But Beth, who is a badass and not a fucking groupie.
Not a groupie.
No. And
well, how they said goopy the first time? I'm like, what's a goopy?
she's not a
Groupie with an
goopy
R.
either. So.
Whatever it is, she isn't it.
And then, of course, we have again Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie, who overshadows the hell out of the entire cast. Like,
amazing.
she's phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Can we just talk about her for a minute?
Yes. I'm in love. And she was cited in an interview saying that she drew a lot of her inspiration for her Deadite version of her from Jim Carrey in The Mask, which I thought was really fucking cool, actually, and
that's
makes
really
a lot of
cool.
sense.
Again, the facial expressions, everything about it.
Yes.
The way she like walks when she first enters the apartment after stuff happens, I'm like, oh,
I
girl,
didn't like
you need
it.
to do more horror. Whenever
In the
there's a
best
body
way.
horror scene, I was like, oh man, Amber's not having a good time right now.
Dude, me and body horror do not get along, but do I still consume the hell out of it? Yes.
Yes, of course. But like the lighting where you couldn't really see her face and you just see her like do the zombie walk and the twitch, I went, I'm gonna like this movie just from that alone. And then the scene later on with her at the door, and talking to Cassie. It was in the trailer, but I still loved it.
Yeah, the
So good.
peephole scenes were honestly probably at the top of my favorite scenes because they were creepy as hell. All parts of it, even when you're just kind of looking into an empty um hallway. I was like,
Mhm.
I don't like that. I don't like that. Of course, when I say in this in this context I don't like it, I mean I fucking love it. So,
Was listening to a review, and they were not a fan of the peephole scene. And I was a little confused in that I'm not going to presume that they didn't understand, because that's very rude. But I feel like the overall reason for the peephole scene is that you have a limited scope, right? And as you're seeing stuff happen, you have no idea. All you're hearing is sounds, and that's the terror. The true horror of horror is not to put everything on display sometimes. I know that we talked in Sissy about how it forces you to watch it, right? And there's a difference between torture porn, right? But there's something about hearing the horrible sounds and you're limited to your safety of this one thing that makes your imagination run wild, and that can be so much worse than anything that they show you because you
yes.
don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And to be like, I don't like the people scene, like,
Yeah.
what do you mean you don't like it?
I think too, uh, we I could name one movie off the top of my head right now that takes that whole aspect of not showing you everything or really anything and still being
Mhm.
terrifying, and that's Skinamarink. Like they take that
Yeah.
exact aspect and run with it, and I love it. It's such an interesting way to view horror because it's the same thing when you're thinking like in the dark, like you hear noises but you can't see anything and you're
Mhm.
you're terrified of like what these noises could possibly be. um that kind of gives it a little oomph in the terror aspects.
I agree. And unfortunately for me, because I'm so obsessed with Silent Hill, that my first thing was like, oh, Silent Hill 4 in the room. Like,
Right.
it's not played out, but I will always play the game of how many degrees away from Silent Hill can I make this? And it was 1 degree. People. Boom. Silent Hill wasn't the person that, or wasn't the game or the media that popularized people horror. It just that makes it sound dirty.
I was I was like, oh,
People horror.
Evil Dead and Chill and Peephole horror.
Inadvertently dirty things. Boom.
Yes. But I told you we were gonna be wilding in the streets with this
Yes,
review.
yes, yes, yes. I don't know. I feel like we could probably talk a lot about the mom and the actress and how she nailed every single line.
Yes.
What,
Her.
mommy's rotting with the maggots now? Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Mommy's with the maggots
It's
now.
no. Oh, it's
Uh
so good. Nothing that
Everything.
a hug can't fix, sweetie. Like, just everything about it was so good.
I love that. She's just like you just see like the top of her head and everything else is kind of like a little bit further away because of the angle. And she's like, nothing a big old kiss from you can't fix. With her little accent. Ah.
And just her like little head paw. Oh god, it was
So
so
good.
good. I just, everyone did such a great job in this film, but she carried.
Yes.
Carried the movie. I want to go rewatch it for her performance and her
Yes.
performance alone.
Yeah. I love that both her and like they were very specific about this. Both her and Nell Fisher,
Mhm.
Cassie, did
Yeah.
their own stunts.
Did they?
Yes.
Oh, look at that.
I
Oh
love
my
it.
god, that's crazy.
I love that. I saw a video on Twitter actually of Nell Fisher doing this little like roll on a mattress, and I was like, "That's so fucking cute!" Like, yes,
Do so well.
I love it. She definitely carries, and there's part of me, and I feel like I say this at least once every video, is that I feel bad for
Sure.
saying something, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to discredit the acting
Oh.
performances. I just couldn't get behind some of the characters to the point where like I just didn't care about them. However, regardless, the level of risk that was involved in this entire scenario was not at all lost on me. Because
Mhm.
we have this typical theme of motherhood throughout the Evil Dead um movies and content. And you have in the first movie, you have Ash and Cheryl's mom not being around, and then the two characters in the 2013 movie, have their qualms over their mother, to the extent that the main character, she's the whole reason that they're even in that cabin to begin with, because she has some some results of events that transpired between her and her mother. And then I I thought of in Ash versus Evil Dead, one of the first like major Deadite appearances you see is Kelly's mom. Um,
Oh yeah.
but but Lee Cronin came in and he said, move. And he ups the ante on the motherhood thing and makes the main antagonist the mother, with all of the potential victims being her family. Like, not just her family, it's not just her sister and like some family members, it is her
Her.
sister and her own damn kids.
Yep.
And that is crazy. I'd never thought, I don't know, I've never expected something like that to come out of an Evil Dead movie, or most movies really, but it was
Is,
such a crazy scenario to be in.
is this where I can talk about child harm?
Yes.
I left the theater and I thought, we don't usually do that to kids in horror films.
Right.
And like I had to sit and think about, right? I'm trying to think like, okay, well, like what are the rules? What are the parameters around harming children? And like you get teenagers, right? And again, something I want to look more into is like the ageism, right?
Right.
Of murder victims in horror films. But like if you're gonna have a teenager die, I know what you did last summer, Halloween,
Mhm.
Friday, blah blah blah. The people who are dying have misbehaved in some way, right? They are being a little snooty. They are partying a little too hard, right? Like there's doing something morally against what society has said
Right.
a good upstanding citizen should do, right? So they get murdered, and it's supposed to be like a Grimm's fairy tale kind of tongue in cheek. Don't do this, or you might die, right? Um, but then you have these kids who are just stuck in this apartment and have done really nothing morally objectable, right? And it is gruesome what
Yeah.
happens to these kids. And I just remember sitting there thinking, like, you do not see that very often.
No.
Which then made me wonder if it were any other movie, right? Like, is this our final frontier for horror as we continue to push the limits of what scares us? Kids have always been kind of a safety, right? Like, kids might experience harm, and I'm going to use kids like 16 under in this case, even 13 under, poltergeist, right? But you're not going to see it to such an extent
Right.
as what happens to these kids here. And you get the idea like Danny must be at least 16, has a license,
Right.
right? But everyone else is young, like their age doesn't really get said, and they all look pretty young too.
Yeah.
They're not 18-year-olds being played by 35-year-olds, right?
Right.
They all look like kids.
Yeah.
And Cassie at some point is literally Homer style being choked up against a wall, right? I'm like, you do not see that very often.
No.
And I hope edgelords, which sounds bad and bitter, you know what I mean? I hope someone doesn't go, oh yeah, what people liked about this was kids were hurt, and like start making a lot of content about
Right.
kids being hurt, because that's not the message.
No.
And I say that as someone like in my top 10 video, I list Corpse Party as like one of my favorite things. Like I don't like it
Right.
because kids are getting hurt. Like there's a broader story happening to it that matters.
Right.
And so just like how Saw, like, okay, cool, we had Saw 1, and then we got this like series of torture porn horror movies. My hope is for horror that we continue to keep the child in a sense sanctified, and that we don't push that limit too much further than what
Right.
Evil Dead already did.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I remember when I was younger, I saw this movie called The Children, which
Mhm.
if you're not seeing that movie, it's a movie where this group of people goes to a cabin in mountains, and all of the kids get sick and they start killing everybody. And
Well,
yeah, and it's crazy. And I remember seeing that when I was younger and I was like, what the shit did I just watch? And obviously, Children of the Corn has been around forever, and so
Mhm.
I'm personally more used to seeing children as villains in horror films, to a point where I've almost become like, and I hate to say this, but I've almost become like desensitized to the idea of children being villains um in horror films. But even you think like Walking Dead and stuff like that, like Sophia was one of the first times, other than like the Walker kid at the beginning, that you
Mhm.
see the consequences of a child getting hurt.
Hurt.
And it was super impactful, not only because it was like a main character's daughter, but because it was a kid. Um, so it was crazy to bear witness to what Evil Dead or what in Lee Cronin decided to kind of push the envelope on in this movie. And it's funny, originally my thought was that this movie was, it kind of played it a little safe when it came to certain things, but now that we're having this conversation, I'm like, you know what, fuck it, no it didn't. It really like pushed some boundaries. And
Because you brought up a really good point when you said like, "Oh, I've been numb to kids as villains," and I think that's a major distinction. Once kids have transformed into the monster,
right,
they're no longer kids. We don't view them
true,
as kids.
yeah,
They are now masquerading as monsters, right? And I think that happens in this too, which is why I go like, "Is it that crazy?" But I think there's a difference between Danny getting knifed,
right,
right, and Bridget eating glass. Like, there's that transition period of innocence and being harm done and into them becoming monsters. But because the monsters are so still like still have like personality or try to share their insights, like, oh shit, is that really a monster now? Or
right,
that's still just them? And the difference of Deadite, Danny, and Bridget. For me, what really stood out was Cassie being strangled.
yeah,
Um, for whatever reason, that was like really my brain. I was like, oh, you don't see that.
right.
You don't see little kids getting hurt like that.
At least
Um,
she had Stephanie, right? Is
at
that
least
what?
she had Stephanie. Ooh, we all need a Stephanie. That's what I think.
I'm
I
gonna
would
make one.
I hate puns, but I saw that or heard that one. No, that's fair.
I
That's
like it.
fair. I like it. That's all I can say. Um, but I just
Mhm.
want to at least put that last little input of once kids have become villains, they're no longer kids in audience perspective,
Right.
um, making them fair game. But no, I think it was handled well. Just it was interesting how it was handled.
Yeah. And I think the idea that all of the potential victims being her children is super impactful at the end as well, when she's literally turning into this creature and assuming various body parts of her own children.
The
And
Marauder, what a cool fucking
yes.
name.
And I think that that's fucking dope. And it not only in the sense that, we're introduced to a new something new from the Necronomicon that we've not ever seen, but also it ties all of the craziness that we watch with again, the risk involved in this scenario in her kids dying.
The Marauder is so cool. I will supply it in our notes, in our show notes. There was an analysis I saw of someone talking about the marauder concept, moreover being parents will have kids so that way they can take care of them in the future, right? And the marauders are a really twisted way of that, of you've lost an arm, you've lost a leg, and now your kids are literally giving themselves
I
to the
like that.
mom. It was a really good analysis, and of course, I can't remember which one it was. I have a few up that I can recommend, but Um, I apologize to the person who did a lot of hard work, and we'll be sure to link it in the show notes, though.
That's actually a really cool
Right?
analysis. I'm crazy and I was like, do I want to deep dive into real like in-depth analysis of this movie and of past Evil Dead movies? And knowing myself, the answer is always yes. I always want to know more about Evil
Sure.
Dead, right? But I knew going into talking specifically about Evil Dead Rise, I was like, because I know there's like a list of at least 25 Easter eggs, and I don't cover all of them. For the simple fact that we will be here for 3 days. Okay. Um, and
Fair.
same thing with like deep dive analysis of this. If we did that on top of Easter eggs, we would be here for probably a week.
Yes.
So to spare y'all,
Mhm.
I really eventually we're gonna do it. Trust me. But I tried so hard not to like get really in
In the
depth
week.
with a lot of the content that people have made with analyzing the film and all of that stuff, because I know that if I do that, y'all ain't gonna hear from me for a while. Like I'll be in it.
I can stop bringing it up.
No,
It's one of those
please
things.
keep
Oh,
bringing it up because I love it.
I feel like the show notes will just be like Alex's instead of like a book list, like a watch list. Hey,
Right.
here was everything that I consumed within a 24-hour period afterwards, like a neurotypical person does.
All right.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool.
Me recognizing that I am also not, so I can't do
We can laugh together. We can have a merry time and then laugh.
that.
Oh,
um
shoot.
I think, speaking of Easter eggs, I think this is so lame, but one of my favorite Easter eggs in this whole thing was when Beth is handed the gauntlet, the chainsaw, it being yellow instead of red.
Yep.
Let's talk
Yeah, yeah.
about why, shall we? Um,
Yeah.
so obviously in Evil Dead, it's like the car is iconic. Ash's Delta is
Yes.
iconic. And
Mhm.
this is one of the only films that does not feature the Delta in any way, shape, or
Interesting.
form, except it does. They matched the color of Ash's fucking Delta
Really?
to the
The
chainsaw. So it
chainsaw.
was still like a callback to the Delta. That's why it's yellow and not red. And when I read that,
I
I was
like
like,
that.
that's
Let's
so
go.
fucking cool. I don't know. I just I loved it. I loved it.
That's really cool. Like I can catch on to stuff like, oh, we have the wood chipper that has the blood rain, right? Like how are you gonna have blood rain when you're inside? Oh, you threw a
Right.
body through a body chipper, and like that's how you get that mimic. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
that's a good touch. The eyeball was one of my
Oh my god.
favorite
Yes.
Easter egg moments. I remember seeing it, I'm like, that's important, and I found out later why.
Yes.
And, it's funny because they bring up the shotgun early on,
Mhm.
but it's so out of context that even when she's using it, it wasn't until she picked up the chainsaw and went, ah, boomstick. Like it took me a little too long. And again, I'm not upset by that. That
Right.
made me happy as someone. I didn't feel like I was being force fed. Do
Right.
you get it? Do you get this is Evil Dead? It
Right.
just felt like a
Yeah.
natural part of the movie. Uh, which again I think is my highlight of you have your bingo board,
Right.
but I didn't feel like I was being force fed an Evil Dead
Yeah.
movie.
Lee Cronin does an absolutely phenomenal job tying this as an Evil Dead movie to the rest of the franchise with all of like the Easter eggs and stuff
Mm-hmm.
without making you feel like, yeah, okay, I get it. It's Evil
Evil
Dead. Like,
Dead.
obviously, I would never be like that because I would love the irony of an Evil Dead movie force feeding me Evil Dead content, right? But
It's pretty meta, and I would say par for the
right,
course.
but I love the way that he went about the like again the tying of this film into the rest of the franchise. It just it is just so natural and it's perfect and I love it.
I've heard that Sam Raimi,
Hmm.
Rami, Raimi, and Bruce Campbell are working on an Evil Dead Bible. So that way, anyone who wants to do an Evil Dead film will be like, "Hey, here's the binder. Here's everything you need to know, lore wise, concept wise."
Shut the front fucking door.
Yeah, so that way, because I think a lot of them are kind of, nearing the end of their Evil Dead careers or their careers, possibly. Again, not in a bad way, right? Just time has come and passed, but they want to keep doing stuff, and they said that
Right.
if Evil Dead Rise did well enough, that they'd make more movies. There's all the rumors about an Evil Ash versus Evil Dead cartoon animated series coming out too, because before Bruce Campbell was like, I'm never doing this anymore. Now he's like, well, actually. Um,
Right.
but for them to come up with a set of rules, and I think this is a good example of a set of rules. And maybe it's a weird comparison, but bear with me on this. Ghostbusters remake all female cast, and how people were like,
As
this
people
isn't
do.
my Ghostbusters. And there's a reason why people feel that way that may or may not be warranted. Um,
Oh, we see you.
we, we see you. I didn't see that movie in theaters and cry like a baby. It's fine. It meant a lot to me, okay? Uh, but I think there's a difference of like, oh, here's this well-loved franchise, and we're just gonna shove a bunch of stuff into it that we think should be in it.
Right.
And which admittedly, I will say, female Ghostbusters has that.
Right.
Where this feels like no, they followed a set of rules and it was within the parameters and they made it their own in a
Yeah.
way that was beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like you can really the easiest way to describe it in simplest of terms is Lee Cronin understood the damn assignment. He said, "We're
Yes.
gonna make an Evil Dead movie, cool," and he
There we
shows
go.
that like it's showcased perfectly.
Hmm.
Obviously Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi were executive producers, And there, in some aspects, I feel like there's some parts maybe that I can kind of imagine like Sam Raimi being like, like in his ear about
Yes.
something, but overall, it's fucking, it's just perfect as an Evil Dead movie for me. This is pretty much exactly what I would hope for. Obviously, it kind of exceeded my expectations by a lot,
Mhm.
actually, but it's what I would hope for in a Evil Dead film coming out in 2023.
Yeah. And I think we talked earlier, I can't remember if it was in a video or off air, how watching Ash vs. Evil Dead, and I thought, it's an Evil Dead show.
Hmm.
Like, and I kind of had a lukewarm. Like, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It's like, this was an Evil Dead show. Whereas I walked out of this, I went, this is an Evil Dead show. And like, they both check off all the boxes, but this one had me a lot more hype
Yeah.
for what it was. And it's not bad. It's not bad to have something that's exactly what you want it to be.
No.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel when you have
Oh
a
my god,
perfectly good
shut
wheel.
up. That's literally
What?
part of my outro. That it doesn't
It
reinvent the wheel, but it does a damn good job at what it is.
is
Yes.
you and me. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Oh, I love it because it makes me feel seen. It's like we get it. We are two people who are just basically at this point kind of fangirling over Evil Dead Rise. And you know what? I'm not fucking like I'm proud of that. Like
I'm
genuinely,
proud of it.
this is a movie that I am proud as an Evil Dead fan to add to the collection of this franchise. And I'm really fucking excited to see what Lee Cronin does with the franchise in the future because obviously with that ending, we're getting a sequel.
Obviously, we're getting a freaking sequel.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Did you? I didn't recognize it in the theater. I found it later on. I didn't realize Bruce Campbell had a voice cameo.
Yes, he did. He did. So I'm a little confused about that though, because
Oh,
initially when I was watching the movie and it's, playing through the priest talking on the tapes, I thought that Bruce Campbell's cameo was just the little voice in the background that goes, "It's called the Book of the Dead for a reason."
reason.
But everybody is talking about it just being the priest, and nobody is mentioning, I've not seen anyway, anybody mention the fucking voice that is very clearly Ash yelling that over it, and they're saying that it's just the priest talking.
And what's funny, I see on IMDb, he isn't even listed as the priest. He's listed as the distorted voice on the record. So, like, he might not even be the priest, but because when then I had to go look up a trailer. I'm like, that doesn't sound like Bruce Campbell to
No,
me.
it doesn't.
The priest doesn't. And I'm like, but doesn't mean that someone can't
Right.
fake an accent, right? Like, what a better cameo. I didn't even catch that. Like, it's obviously Ash saying it's Book of the Dead. Um, but if it's the distorted, if it's him saying the words, that's
Yeah.
also a really good
I
Ash cameo,
Yes,
right?
it is. And honestly, it really could be the priest because it's Bruce Campbell. What can't Bruce Campbell do, you know?
Oh, what a talent. We need to like just do a fan cam. Bruce Campbell pictures with like hearts and
Oh my
stuff.
god. Like imagine what's her name? Angelica? No, not Angelica, that's Rugrats. Whoever that blonde chick is in Hey Arnold that has that whole like shrine dedicated
Helga.
Helga. Yes.
Helga.
Hi,
But instead of
I'm Helga.
Arnold, it's just Bruce Campbell. Oh my god. Another interesting observation I heard from people, and I think I want to echo it. We got introduced to a lot of people within the apartment complex,
Hmm.
and they just kind of served as a meat shield,
Yeah.
right? And I really thought a hunky boy was going to be like a hero at some point. We don't ever even get to go through the apartment that they were trying to go through, and that's weird because we can talk about Chekhov's gun all that we want. They very purposely were talking about that room, and they never enter it. Interesting storytelling.
Right.
Okay, I have one more thing I want to talk about specifically that comes to
Hmm.
mind. It's gonna be very brief. As far as Easter eggs go, it's the elevator scene when Ellie goes in with the
Sorry.
wires, and I'm sitting there like, man, don't make it weird.
Right.
Like, I I really was like, you have an opportunity, but don't do it, man. There's some things that don't need to be Easter eggs twice. Like, don't do it. And they didn't make it weird. And I have found out since that Sam Raimi has said, "Ooh, if I could go back and not do that, I would." Like
Right.
he has is like not the biggest fan of that scene to begin with.
Right.
So
Which respect as fuck for you, by the way. Thank you. That's all.
right, like own it. 70s were a different time, sure, sure,
Right.
sure. But to be like, oh yeah, that wasn't the best thing in the world. Um, but I was totally waiting for it to get weird, and it gets weird in a different way, but not in
Right.
a creepy
Yeah.
sexual.
And no, this is of course no disrespect to anybody because
Mhm.
that's not what I'm here for. I'm just here to
Yeah.
talk about movies. But I've always been kind of like I don't want to say that I think of it as like one of those situations where it's like, oh, if you do this, say this, whatever, red flag
Mhm.
immediately.
Right.
But I understand the idea of the particular scene that we are obviously talking about, being an iconic thing for the franchise, but why? Like, why is it such an like? It's.
Hmm.
I don't think that it is. I don't, I don't, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I've never heard Sam Raimi say that if he could go back and take that scene out, that he would. So at that point, that kind of, I think to me, says enough as it is. Like, it's a weird thing to have, but also, why are y'all so obsessed with it? You know?
Yeah, we're looking at you.
Riddle me that. Why y'all so obsessed with it? But I do like that they definitely strayed away from that.
Mhm.
I will say though, my gasp of excitement was the
Yes.
fact that you reminded me of something that I completely fucking forgot to mention, which was one of my favorite parts of this movie. I feel like I've said that about literally everything, but bear with me.
Sure.
The
Okay.
fucking elevator scene. The shining
The
fucking
blow up.
elevator scene.
Oh my god.
Ugh. Like, thank you. That's all. Like literally if I could
Awesome.
sit down, if I had 5 seconds to say something to Lee Cronin, it would literally just be thank you. This movie is fucking dope. And you can tell that I love it as much as I do because I'm kind of unhinged right now and just cussing as much as possible where I don't normally do that.
I I I want to caution because that means per that response that you enjoy the Pope's Exorcist a lot because you
Did I
were
cuss?
also a little unhinged with Pope's Exorcist.
Okay. You know what? That's true. Uh I shall explain.
I
Pope's
Please.
Exorcist was fun, and
It was fun.
I was after the fact hyped for how much fun I had watching a movie in a theater again.
Yes.
Evil Dead Rise is just it's my movie. Anything Evil Dead is my movie, and honestly, we have not had a bad piece of the Evil Dead franchise thus far, and I'm
Hot take.
gotta cross my
Okay.
fingers.
Fingers, all of them.
Crossing my fingers that it continues that way. But again, I have I'm putting my faith in Lee Cronin and I'm not scared about it. Um
No, I agree. I feel really comfortable with him picking up the helm of of what could happen in the future.
why is that a hot take?
Oh, I feel like a lot of people don't like the 2013
Oh, no, yeah, I
Evil
hear that
Dead
a lot, which blows my fucking mind. But that's a conversation for a different day.
for a different day.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more stuff I want to talk about. I
Hmm.
liked the sibling dynamic a lot between the three, Bridget, Danny, and Cassie. Particularly how protective they all were, and also this they kind of acted like they knew that they'd seen a horror movie before, right? They knew to hide. They didn't well, clearly not all the time, because some bad stuff happens, but they recognized specifically that they had to protect Cassie, right? The
Hmm.
littlest one. Don't look down the hall. Just redirect as mom's coming out of the tub. Mom coming out of the tub too. Ah, screaming. Oh, what a cool scene.
The
But like they were
loudest thing I've ever heard.
I it was a subtle like There was never a point of, "You don't have to protect me, I'm big," right? They all just worked as a unit to know to, like, circle the wagons, protect each other. We don't know what's going on with mom. We can't do anything about mom, but we can protect each other, and they worked really hard to do that, and I thought that was a good touch. I really like the scene where Beth is listening to the records,
Mm,
and you see Ellie coming
mm,
in along
mm.
the wall. Again, as far as cinematography goes, scene setting, oh god, it was perfect. It
Yeah.
was perfect. There's no way that scene could have been built better.
I think that's probably the scariest scene to me. I think from an actual like jump scare type perspective,
Mhm.
it's hands down the creepiest. And the thing with this movie, and it's funny that you actually brought up Pope's Exorcist because I said that that movie was not scary at all.
Yeah.
I feel relatively similar to this one. Like I didn't find myself scared at all, but he does a damn good job of creating tension. I felt
Yes.
tense. I felt anxious, but not scared.
I'm right there with you. There was a point. Okay, first off, jump scares. I like that the jump scares were good jump scares. It'd be super easy. Again, her thing when she's staring at Beth, and it'd be super easy for the jump scare to be her face rushing towards the camera. No, what actually the jump scare is Beth being pushed out of the room, thrown up against some furniture instead. It's still a jump scare, but it isn't the cheap horror jump scare, right?
Right.
It's still breaking the tension. It's doing what jump scares are meant to do, right?
Right.
Which is reset the emotion state. Um, but I'm right there with you. I think it was about that same thing where I went, "Is this a horror movie?" And I went, "Girl, you've been watching too much horror. If you're concerned that this isn't a scary movie, like
Right.
it is scary, and it's scary to lots of people. Just because you're a little dead inside does not mean that it doesn't. Of course, it's a horror film. Obviously, it is. But I was right there with you. I never felt scared, but I
Right.
enjoyed it so much, so much.
Yeah. I like that they refrained from the typical like let's build the music up as much as we can so you know that something's about to happen and then
I think another good tension, we talked about it already, but like nothing a big hug and kiss from you won't help. And Cassie going for the lock,
oh,
and
I
is
was
she
so
gonna do
mad.
it? Is she gonna do it? Is she gonna do it? At least her, she's a 9-year-old. I don't know if you're not gonna fault a 9-year-old for doing that,
Well,
right?
I
Well, okay,
might.
apparently Amber would fault a 9-year-old or however old she is. She seemed younger than that, than 9 for Stephanie. Anyways,
Stephanie. Long live Stephanie.
sorry. A trade of thought. They did such a good job of setting up future deaths.
Hmm.
Very beginning, cuts the head off the baby, throws the scissors under the couch. I went, that's gonna be something later, and it was. The scissors end up being a major part of it later. But there were several little aspects like that were like, here's obviously something that's gonna matter in the future. And I wasn't mad that it was an obvious setup.
Right.
I was excited, like, oh, we're setting this up now within the first half hour. What's gonna happen? How is that gonna come back? And I was excited to see where it was going.
Just, I could talk for literally like hours about this movie.
I mean, we could. It's our channel. We can do whatever we want.
True.
Or, I mean, what if we just made more videos?
Yeah. What if?
What if we like built out 3 to 4 videos deep diving into the Evil Dead? Wouldn't that be crazy?
Y'all,
Wouldn't that
y'all,
be wild?
y'all picking up what the dip?
Do we want to talk about that now? Is there anything else you want to talk about before we talk about future plans?
No. We have long since surpassed the bulk of my notes. So at this
Okay.
point, I'm jiving.
Jiving, we're groovy. Um, well then, okay. We've been tossing around the idea. We Amber specifically because it's her baby. It's the Evil Dead obviously is your thing, right? And we've been trying to workshop a way like, okay, let's do an Evil Dead Rise video, and then we'll do another video that's going to talk about the franchise as a whole. And then I did my deep dive. And you guys are going to enjoy my little watch list. And I went, we can't just do one video because I have a lot to say, and I haven't been a lifelong fan. So I have proposed to dear Amber here that we make it a several part thing. And I think we'll talk more about that leading on. But I know some of the things we want to talk about are like behind the scenes of the original, timelines, how they all fit together, specifically with like the original Evil Dead then taking like what are these? How do these new ones fit into it? Like for the record, I love the theory that there's 3 books
Yeah.
and that each universe is having a different book pop in. Very good, very good. Um, and I think it's clear that we come from a place that we love this franchise. It's delightful, but we're very aware that we're not the only ones who are huge fans of this. And I just anticipate if you're an Evil Dead fan, keep an eye out. We should do like, subscribe, follow us on Twitter because I think we're gonna find ways to get you all involved too. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it can come together and just shower love all over the Evil Dead.
Yes, this project is probably going to be what my what I would imagine my version, like a love letter to Evil Dead, would look like. But like you said, we are gonna need some help writing that letter. So if you don't already, follow both of us on Twitter as well as the channel Twitter, all down here.
Ooh,
Uh,
look at all of them.
because we will hopefully be posting some more details on that very soon to the Twitters.
Yay, Twitters.
Yay.
I'm so excited. It's gonna be good. I think it's we've been doing a lot of reviews, and that's not bad. I love reviewing movies, but I know our fancy little header says that we're gonna do analysis and other things. I'm excited to take the next step into what we want to see this channel be like. It's been fun exploring. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think we've only done a handful of episodes so
I
far,
know.
but it's been a blast, and I can't wait to make more with you.
I am so excited.
Oh my god! You should talk about Shutter Sundays.
Yes. So, by the time that this comes out, we will actually have a Shutter Sunday finally out. It is our first one, and we talk a little bit about what it is in the video, but brief overview. Every other week, we alternate picking a Shutter exclusive or original film from Shutter. And in
Oh
a
no!
short form video, we just kind of talk a little bit about it. Give you guys a little bit of a taste of
A little nugget.
of what it is, what it's about, how we liked it, perceived it, etc. To brainwash you into watching it. No, I'm just kidding. To
Influence. We're influencers.
yes, to influence you into watching it. And the first one that we did was Sissy, funny enough, about an influencer. And so that's up now. So I'm really excited about that to, like, again, deep dive into what Shudder has to offer. Um
I'm excited too. So this next one that we're gonna be watching is Gwen,
yes.
and it was my pick, and I know nothing about it, and it should be wonderful because of that. I try really hard, honestly, these days not to watch too much like trailers for horror films if I can get away with it. After watching Sinister and having the best horror theater experience of my life, having never seen a trailer.
I don't trust these damn trailers these days anymore.
Sometimes they give it all away, and that's a
Yeah,
shame.
it is.
In the meanwhile, as you mentioned earlier, should we have need for someone to read every syllable correctly out of the big book, where can we find you?
All of my demon incantations are available on Twitter, where you can
Ooh.
follow me at Amber Blitz. And again, I have a letterbox now, which I'm really excited about. I'm going to start using it a little bit more. Obviously, I'm using it as like a what I've watched recently.
Mhm.
But once we start like getting these videos out for the stuff that we're watching, that we'll have videos, I'm going to start posting reviews, and even on stuff that we're
Ooh.
not going to talk about, that we have no plans to talk about, that I watch, I'm going to review some extra stuff. So a little extra review content for everybody, including myself. So.
Oh, I love it. You were almost inspiring me to do a letterbox,
Do
and
it.
then I realized I have no energy.
Oh my
I
god.
my thing right now is Storygraph. I've been reading a lot of books this year. We can talk more about that later, but I'm on Storygraph, and it makes pretty little graphs of all the books I've read, and it makes me happy. If Letterboxd did a graph, I'd probably join that too.
Petition.
um, petition. We just need 1,000 signatures for me to get a letterbox. But if you want to something clever about Evil Dead and myself and my social medias, then you can find me over at Roll for Alex on Twitter. A lot of my stuff that I'm doing is tabletop role play, actual play related. So if you want to see where I'm going to be next, be sure to follow me there.
Hell
And then
yeah.
we never promote it. We also have Down Home Horror, which is if you want to not miss out, you should be hitting the bell, right? Take a second, hit that bell. All right, good for you. Um, that Amber does a great job of making sure that we have posts up, notifying folks about our new episodes, anything new upcoming. Like, we're working really hard to get an actual podcast format, not just on YouTube, so you can listen to us wherever you may go. So any news related to Down Home Horror, you can follow us there on Twitter as well. Until next time, be sure to check under your bed for monsters because I can't.
And I won't.
Until then, bye.
Bye.